All right, here we go. We're live. So, with a bit of luck, if people go to startupchat.co/live, then that should redirect through to today's episode and they can comment in the chat just below the episode if they want to hit us up with any questions. You ready to get going, Alex?
Yeah, look at me trying to multitask. I'm trying to submit this link to Growth Hackers. Am I going cross-eyed? Am I like... I struggle. I'm ready to go. Let's do this thing.
I'm just going to click the generated recording is unexpectedly. Yeah, ScreenFlow's kind of freaking out on me. I'm just trying to make sure the ScreenFlow thing records, but anyway, let's make a start anyway. So if people are listening, hopefully you'll be able to see us live on startupchat.co/live, and that will redirect through to the episode. So that's how we're going to do the live stuff. And during the show, you'll be able to comment below the live stream, and those comments will just become part of the comments for the show notes. So today's episode, we don't have a guest. We've actually got some pretty cool guests coming up. I think we're booked out for the next 3 or 4 weeks, but today we don't have any guests, and we're just going to go through our monthly income report, which is not quite the end of January, but by the time we get a free spot on the podcast, it's going to be well into February. So today seemed like a good time to do that monthly report. Let me see. Let's kick it off with a bit of a pitch. Are you ready to pitch, Claff?
I can see your pitch. I'm ready to pitch, but yours is a bit of an aggressive pitch today.
Oh, right. The people don't get to see the words I put in there. They only just get to hear what I say, so we'll leave some of those words out.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so my pitch is we would absolutely love if you give us a review on iTunes. And I don't think we've had any. We had a few towards the end of last year, but we haven't had any, as far as I know, on the new podcast. So go into iTunes, put in Startup Chat, and we would love if you give us a rating and just leave a comment in there and we'll read it out on the show. So please do that when you have a second.
That's your pitch. So it's my turn to pitch, right?
Yeah, are you going to pitch the same thing or are you going to mix it up?
Well, I'm going to let one of our customers do the pitching for us. So this is a testimonial that we got for WP Curve from customer number 1, which is Mr. Damien Thompson, and you can find him over at Lynchpin.
He gets a mention on our show just about every week too.
And so he should. He's our earliest adopter. If we release something, he's always behind it and trying to help us out. So we figure, this is what he had to say about WP Curve. And I quote, "WP Curve is exactly what my business needed. All of these little issues on my site started to become a real problem, but I didn't have the time or inclination to hire someone full time. The WP Curve team respond to all of my development needs quickly, and the work is excellent. I'm afraid to recommend them too much. I want to keep them all to myself." That's my pitch for the day.
Nice work. And you, of course, have got DT's permission for reading that out live on the show.
Of course. Well, he let us put it on the site, so I'd assume he can put it on the show. Sorry, DT.
Good stuff. All right, so January, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. It's been a pretty good month. It's not quite over. We've got 2 more days, but it's been pretty good, especially if you look back and you think like the first week, we weren't doing a whole lot, and January you would expect to always be slow. So, so yeah, let's go through all the main points of how January's been and what we're up to, and then we'll put these in the show notes, and we'll also put out a full report on early next week. But we've got a pretty good summary of what January has been so far.
Yeah, and I think
do you want to kick it off with the monthly revenue?
Yeah, I love to read out the monthly revenue number. I think that's like the second thing I quote when I talk about our business. The first thing is like explaining what we do, and then I'm like, and we've been around for 7 months, and this is where we're at, and people are like, okay, like it's not just like one of those. I don't know. You hear sometimes it's like WordPress support for websites. I hear a lot of that sort of pitching now that I've been getting out to these events, but I'm like, okay, we do 24/7 WordPress support. We've got 200 subscribers across our 4 businesses, and our MRR is at $11,329. So I usually say about 11,000, give or take, but Yeah, 11,329 at this point in time, which is what, up
Nice.
15%? Up 15% from December, which is 5% ahead of target, which we're pretty happy with.
Very happy. Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that it's January and a quiet month, and so what was it? 9,000 at the end of December. It was 9,800, and we were kind of keen to get to 10k, and we were a bit bummed that we didn't get there, but we got there very quickly in the new year. I think like on the 3rd of Jan, and then we passed 11k, and yeah, to beat our growth target for January is pretty awesome, I reckon, and to hit that 200 customer, I guess milestone is good too.
Because I think you put a post out about it on Facebook, something about like we had 100 customers at X date, and now we're looking at 200, and it's like that growth curve is starting to go a little bit steeper, which is nice to see.
Yeah. So I'm not sure at what point it becomes like impressive when you go to entrepreneurial events. Probably when you get to like 100k a month, then people will be like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good." I don't know.
It's interesting though. We'll get into the meetups and stuff that I've been going to and talk about some of the businesses that I've heard about. But when Sean Ellis was talking about Qualaroo, he was saying his last, I think he said his last 6 months have been 10% month on month MRR growth, and he said that's okay, but for a SaaS it needs to be up around 20 or 25%. So I think it's really dependent on the business as well, because I don't know, sustaining 25% growth, like having to build a team, making sure that your support desk is running like a well-oiled machine and making sure that everyone's still happy. I think steady as she goes is probably the right way for us to head forward.
Yeah, well, it is different with software because there's not really anything stopping that natural growth. Like there's no inhibitors stopping unless you've built the software incorrectly, it can just keep growing. So let me just get this right. Sean Ellis, is he the guy who came up with Qualaroo and then sold it to Kissmetrics, or was it the other way around?
No, they acquired it from Kiss Insights. So they had a working version of the product, and I think they picked it up. So the thing that I didn't know about Sean Ellis, which I learned last night, was that he's worked across a bunch of different companies, and all of these startups or the majority of these startups have had really big exits, and he's been a big part of that with his approach to marketing. And I did take that recording that we'll check if the audio quality is good enough to share it as part of these show notes, but it's just really insightful to hear. He's very methodical and systematic and analytical, and you can tell he just loves the numbers. Like he breaks down every single part of his funnel and looks for little bits that he can optimize. And I think you'd actually get along with him really well because from what I've seen, you're the numbers man too. So I'm like the big picture guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And you hit him up to be on the podcast, right?
Yeah. So I'll get that happening. I think we've set a tentative date. I'll just get him to confirm. He's a busy guy, but I think it'll be in 3 weeks' time. This time in 3 weeks. So pretty keen to get him on and talk shop. He's a very smart guy. Very
awesome.
Smart
just
guy.
check what we've got lined up because I've set up a few for the next couple of weeks as well. So what we do is when we've got a guest, like an influencer coming on, then we invite members of our private community to come on the call with us, and they can ask questions live while we're doing the call, but the call will still be streamed live via Hangouts. But yeah, I think we've got at least 2 in the next 3 weeks that are booked out. So just
Yeah,
it'll be good. We've got some good guests coming up. Yeah. All right, so I'll give a bit of an update on the content marketing. We wanted to hit 365 pieces of content for the year, and we also wanted to try and make sure that each month we were on target with that. And we started pretty strong, and we've done okay. I think we're up to, including this podcast, which is now technically published, I think we're up to 24 pieces of content in January, which is pretty good because I don't think we worked every day in January, at the start, and we've also done quite a few off-site things which we count like interviews on other podcasts that haven't been published yet. So I think we're pretty close to 1 piece of content a day, and I've also written a lot of content in the last week, which we'll talk about a bit later for this book, and I've only published 1 chapter and I've written 14 chapters. So I think there's plenty more content we can put out there, but that just comes down to the strategy of how we're going to deal with editing the book and and whether we put a bunch of chapters out there first. But we certainly created a lot of content and probably created more than 30 pieces of content.
And we're also doing something a little bit new in the fact that we're like doing like accepting some guest posts as well, and that's something that I'm trying to steer. And it's kind of it is a bit of a process because we've got our particular writing style. We're quite specific about what we do and don't do on the blogs that we have, and in terms of length and quality and all of that sort of stuff. It's going to be fun to sort of work with a few different authors to see how they've come through, because I know that we've got maybe 2 posts that are probably about 70 or 80% there, and they're on WordPress MVPs versus building like a small consulting business from one of our community members. So it's good to get a bit more scope of what we're talking about and getting some other people in there to add some value too.
Yeah, I remember when I tried last year, I found it pretty hard to make all that work, the guest post stuff. Hopefully you're a bit more patient than I am. And you probably enjoy editing more than I am.
We should talk about that. Do you want to talk about that?
Patience or editing?
Both, because I think they go hand in hand when it comes to dealing with me.
Sure.
I'll spill the beans. So I've got a bit of a heavy hand when it comes to editing anybody's writing, and it doesn't really matter if it's someone who's a well-established entrepreneur like Dan or someone who's guest posting. Like, it doesn't really matter. I've just got this approach in this way. But what I've done in the past, and it's a habit that I've forced myself to get out of in the last 2 days because I've been in the habit of completely rewriting posts, is I'm actually not allowed to edit any of Dan's work anymore. I'm forcing that restriction on myself purely because I'll see this piece of work and I'll go, okay, I'll just change this little bit, and then I'll change this little bit, and then before I know it, the whole thing's a completely new post. And yeah, from Dan's perspective, that gets pretty frustrating pretty quickly because he's just spent a couple of hours putting this thing together, and then I'm like, hey man, I finished that feedback, and you open it up and it's a completely new post. So now the control measure on that is that when he shares Google Docs with me, it's going to be comments only, which I think I can't actually get around that, even if I want to. Maybe I can do like, remember Hey Dad, where Betty used to put the whiteout on the screen? Do you remember that show?
I do remember, but we don't talk about it now because of what's going on with that dude.
Oh, that's right. But yeah.
But yeah, I am old enough to remember the show.
So I'm on a bit of a hiatus from taking a blowtorch to Dan's posts.
Well,
which is probably a good thing.
It's going to get interesting with the book too, because I was thinking about this, like, with all this stuff I've written for that book, I really do need someone to go in and just rip it apart because it's just flowed out so easily. It's probably just a whole bunch of rubbish. So
I don't think so. I think it's really actually very good because you've sort of poured your heart out. I think it's kind of like that James is it Altucher? I always say his name wrong, but
you always make it sound like he's touching someone. Yes.
He's a tusher. Altucher. Altucher. It's very Altucher-esque, I think, and I think people get a kick out of it. But yeah, what are we up to that part yet to talk about how much?
No.
We're there.
We got totally sidetracked. Oh well, I wanted to mention. I chatted to Matt and Joel yesterday, and Michael from. They've got a couple of businesses, and they're writing a book called How to Build a Rocketship.com. I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I told them they should hit you up for some editing help. Not that I've seen it or know that it needs editing, but I just said if you need anyone to review it, then send it to Claff. But if other people are interested in that, that's howtobuildarocketship.com, and I'm going to be one of the interviews they do for the. I think they're doing a bunch of podcasts leading up to the launch of the book, and they're working on a bunch of products, but I think it's talking to a lot of other entrepreneurs who've worked on a bunch of products and working out what worked and what didn't work, and a big focus on like building that pre-launch list so people hear about your product to start with, and I think that's a pretty useful topic for people. But yes,
speaking of books, the other piece of editing the other book that I got my hands on that looked like it's a really, really solid piece of work, and it's got a lot. Oh no, Dan's disappeared. I'll just keep talking by myself.
No,
There's
I'm
a
here.
book called where did you go? I can only see your avatar. It's tractionbook.com, and it's been produced by Gabriel Weinberg and Justin Merez, and those guys have been working on this book for about, I think he said 18 months. Justin said 18 months, and I had a look at the early version of it, and it's been very thoroughly researched. I know they're sort of putting it through the ringer in terms of editing, and it sounds like it'll be a similar sort of approach to the rocket ship books. So there's a couple of like really, I think they'll be both really good books to check out if you're in that early stage and looking to build your business.
Yes, indeed. So maybe we can have. Is there a link, like a download link for that book, or?
I think I'm just looking at their landing page right now. I think they're doing sample chapters, but I'll include the link in the show notes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's get onto the book. We've had a bunch of different ideas for the book. So we started off with a Trello board with about 10 different ideas. I chose one and I started working on it, and then you ripped it apart and changed the whole meaning of it, and so we chose that. And then last week I started working on, I think I mentioned on last week's show that I was working on a business growth lead magnet for startupchat.co. And I started writing that, and it just flowed out to the point where I've now written 14 chapters and about 13,000 words. And I think, and I've got 7 more chapter ideas to kind of wrap it up. So it's going to turn into about a 20,000 word something, and it probably makes sense to be a book. So maybe that'll be the first book that we put out.
Well, I think this needs like a public disclaimer. It's sort of like, don't try this at home. So Dan's a bit of, I often say this, but Dan's a little bit of a freak when it comes to content creation, and I don't really know too many people that can run a few businesses and write 12,000 words just off the top of their head. So if you're writing something, don't feel that your progress is not as good as Dan's, because Dan's a little bit special in that department. The 12,000 words is phenomenal.
Well, I did cheat a little bit, because as I started writing it, I kind of realized that I was covering topics that I'd put out stuff on before. So I went and had a look at some of the content I put out on a startup chat site, and one of the posts I put on Medium, and brought that across. So I've got 2 or 3 articles that I've sort of rewritten that are part of that 12,000 words. So I cheated a little bit. But and as I say, we're not exactly sure on the quality of those words yet, so it's going to have to be pretty thoroughly edited.
Danger.
But yeah, we hopefully are chatting to Charlie Hone at some stage. I think we'd booked him in to chat with our community, and hopefully he'll agree to do it as a live podcast. I think that was booked in for next week, but I don't know if we've spoken to him this year. But he's got a book out at the moment as well. I think called Play It Away. Is that the name of his book?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. And he's also been involved in lots of book marketing stuff with Tim Ferriss and things. So it's actually pretty good timing. If we've got this thing at least to the point where we know what it's called and know what it's about, then maybe we can ask him a few questions when he comes on the call.
Yeah, he's a real student of self-publishing. So if you look at his site, which is charliehone.com, or his Delicious Links, he's got dozens and dozens of like links to ways people have got traction with their books using self-publishing methods. So really good resources there, and it's going to be cool to be able to pick his brain. I actually sent him an email just to double check, because I know that around the time of a book launch, it's sort of like an all hands on deck product launch thing. So I'm sure he'll be on board, and we'll see us through.
Yeah, but he might also be doing might be keen to get his name out there and a bit more, and do a lot of podcasts and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of a bit daunting thinking about the marketing side of the book, because I was listening to Altich's new podcast, and he had an episode, which I think was an older recording, with Ryan Holiday, talking about how they marketed some of Tucker Max's books and Altich's Choose Yourself book, which is very good. It's kind of daunting to think about what everyone's doing with that, and I just kind of feel like writing and just putting a link up on the site. But so maybe, I don't know, maybe at some stage we're going to have to, probably sooner rather than later, think about how we're going to go about the marketing.
Yeah, the author that I spoke to a gentleman who was like one of the pioneers of self-publishing and used to self-publish back in the 70s and 80s, And he was telling me that, writing the book is 5 or 10% of the work, and the rest of the time is just spent marketing and spreading the word. So I'm sure if you look at a guy like Tim Ferriss, he's got really, really good quality content and a really, really compelling stuff, but he is just a phenomenal marketer. And I think they call it the Land Rush campaign, where you're just like everywhere. You're all over the internet. You're in every channel, and it all happens at once, so you can't really escape it. I don't know if we can dedicate that much time to it, but I think we'll learn a lot from that launch process.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you want to kind of take that on as a job to start thinking about how we're going to do all of that. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of talking points in what I'm writing, and I think there'll be like a lot of different conversations we can have about different topics with, like it won't be a case of going on a podcast and hearing the exact same thing every time, which I know tends to happen when people put out a book. But this book covers a lot of ground, so I think we could potentially, go on podcasts and talk about, growth, or talk about failure, or talk about momentum, or talk about content marketing, or talk about, financial reporting. It covers a lot of stuff, and validation and startups. So that's one thing I'd like to think about is like, if we're going to do a whole bunch of podcast interviews, how do we make sure that they're not all the same?
Yeah, and just looking at the chapter overviews and having a skim, I think there's something in there for everyone. So, well, every entrepreneur anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the report. Traffic-wise, we've had 20,758 visits to our site, or all of our sites, in January, which is a reduction in traffic of 14%. But I think what's happened is we sort of towards the end of last year, we had a fair bit of focus on ConvertPress and Content Club because we'd just put it out there. And this month, we really haven't completed the tasks we had for those two businesses. So we wanted to do the automation sequences to basically tell people about ConvertPress and tell people about our community. And we haven't done those yet. And we're also relaunching both products, and we haven't done that yet, so everything else is sort of held off. So those two sites have been down a lot. The other two sites have been pretty steady. WP Curve's been pretty steady. And StartupChat.co has had 6,720 visits, which is 18% up from what it was last year when it was the old domain. So that's pretty good. And considering the fact that it's January as well, I think is overall pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, we spend a lot of time posting on the Startup Chat, but one of the things that I got out of a meetup is a guy actually recognized me. He's like, "Hey, are you that guy from Startup Chat?" And I was like, "That's cool," because I don't think anyone would ever say, "Hey, are you Alex from thedannorris.com?"
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool.
That's validating our decision.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think that's only ever happened to me once. I don't go to a lot of events though, but I think there's only ever been one situation where I've gone to something in public and someone that I hadn't had any contact with has said, "Oh, you..." Actually, what happened was she said, "Oh, are you Dan Martell?" And I'm like, "No." And then she said, "Oh, no, I mean Dan Norris." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I am actually. Answer B is correct." Which was kind of weird. But anyway, that happened. That's only ever happened once to me, so there you go.
So onto the branding points. As you said, we've got some outstanding tasks with I guess updating the branding of our community, and that I think that's something that we need to like just put our heads together and be really clear on what we're offering, and that takes like a few iterations, and it takes me writing something and you going through and saying, "Hey, like this is not clear," or it's not something that we can definitely commit to, because I guess we've learned from over-promising and under-delivering in some aspects of different businesses. So we're very careful to just say, okay, this is absolutely like what you'll get, and then we'll get you on board, and then we'll give you some extra stuff that you kind of weren't expecting. So yeah, we've got to keep that in mind when we do this.
Yeah, we've got a few of those tasks that are kind of dragging out, and some of them are at my end and some of them are at your end. I think it's a combination of being busy and, in my case, probably working on stuff that's a bit more fun, like writing all this content for the book, which has just been really enjoyable. But yeah, I think we really need to get our ass into gear with those two things in particular because they're two things that aren't really growing without our attention.
Yeah, and they do need some love.
All right, thanks. Spencer is live on our site. He is saying, keep up the great work. That's pretty awesome. That's our first comment on a live episode.
Live comment, loving it.
Very nice. Thank you, Spencer. Okay, podcast download. So last year, the podcast kind of trailed off, and I had a show called Web Domination, and we weren't really posting that much to it. But this year, we launched StartupChat.co, and we're doing a weekly podcast. And much to my delight, when I check the stats, people are actually downloading it. So that's nice. I don't know if you've seen these yet, but
what a treat! They're in the WordPress dashboard, right? When you log in there, like up front, is that what it is?
I'm not sure. I get them from Blueberry on their site, like the media stats.
Mm-hmm.
But they might be in the dashboard as well. I haven't looked in there. But yeah, so we used to get about 2,000 downloads a month, and in January we've had 6,000 downloads, which is good. And also, a lot of the time in January, the podcast was not available and it was migrating to a new area in iTunes and stuff. So, yeah, there you go. It is actually in the WordPress dashboard, so that's cool. So
You've
overall
talked
totals.
about,
Sorry,
I was just going to say you've talked about the I guess the reach of podcasts and how it's kind of hard to quantify what the benefit is, but like it's paid off for you in the past. And that's probably worthwhile talking to for people who are thinking of podcasting themselves as well. Like what is the actual benefit of doing it? I think it's sort of, getting that trust and getting the word out more than trying to sell people your products or your services.
Yeah, well, I think it is very hard to measure. So these numbers don't mean a whole lot. I mean, download stats is like the equivalent of hits on a website. It's when people used to say, yeah, I've had 2,000 hits. I mean, it didn't really mean anything until Google Analytics came out and actually made that data a little bit more meaningful. And I think it's the same thing with downloads. Like I'm fairly sure there haven't been 6,000 individual people listening to every one of our episodes. But I mean, for me, I want to know that these channels are growing. Like I think if we're going to put all this work into this, and this podcast is really about authority and networking, and it always has been. But at the same time, I want to make sure that like all of our channels are growing, our podcast is growing, our YouTube subscribers, our email list, our traffic, and everything. And I think our strategy for marketing our business is a little bit indirect, but it really does. It is really an audience-based strategy where like all of our different channels have to be growing in order for our business to be growing. So it is a bit of a vanity metric, but at the same point, I want to see those numbers going up, and I'm happy to see that we've had a lot more downloads in January. The Neil Patel episode in particular was a lot more popular than some of the others, which is fair enough. But yeah, some of the others are still getting more downloads than my old podcasts would have got, which is cool. And we've also had a couple of sort of anecdotal things, like you mentioned your meetup, and we've had, I think, at least 2 blog posts people have written linking to the podcast, which didn't really happen a lot with my old one. So I think that's all pretty good.
Yeah.
And according to FeedBurner, 350 RSS subscribers, which again, probably not very meaningful at all, but which I think is like iTunes subscribers. But yeah, let's hope that number goes up and keep getting the word out there. No iTunes reviews, as far as I can tell, at least none in the Australian and the US one. So without swearing and without bribing. Actually, are we allowed to bribe? I've heard the AdSense Slippers guys put out a few bribes on their podcast for reviews. So I don't know. Maybe we should bribe.
I don't think you'd do that. I don't think you've got it in you.
No, you can do it though.
Yeah, but if I try and do it, then you'll tell me it's a bad idea. So neither of
Well,
us
it's live. What can I do?
Nah. I think you've swayed me to be a bit more ethical and honest in my dealings. So
right.
If you're listening to this and you've downloaded it, if you could do us a favor and give us a review, that'd be great. That's about as far as the bribe will go.
And if you don't, what are you going to do?
I don't know. I'll probably cry.
Cry. And if you do, Clap will send you a personal email with a photo a really sexy looking photo of himself in black and
Or
white.
I could put that Santa hat back on and try and do another one of those videos.
You could sing a song or something. Sing like Happy Birthday or something.
Actually,
Well, I
that
know you
takes
can
us
think
on
that
to
that Marilyn Monroe kind of style.
not
Can you do
not in
that?
that voice, not in that voice.
Right.
But the happy birthday point takes me onto the meetups. But I know you wanted to talk about YouTube as well.
Yes. So YouTube, this is something we need to work on as well. We don't have a nice looking YouTube channel, but since these are now going up live on YouTube every week, we do have a place for them, and we have to work on the branding and everything. But we've got 45 subscribers on YouTube, which doesn't mean anything to me in terms of a number, but because I have no idea what it was last month. Maybe it was 46. I don't know. I've never looked at it before. But let's see how this goes, and we'll report in this January monthly report how that's going, and next month hopefully that stat will make a little bit more sense. We've got 5,714 views on YouTube, but I think a lot of that is my like stupid videos from back in the day where I used to like get the blender out and try to make Coca-Cola and stuff like that. So
And the
maybe
5-minute Fridays.
Yeah, but so maybe we'll just look at the subscribers more so than the views. But there are some nice benefits of doing this on Hangouts, including the ability to auto-publish to YouTube, and this just goes live to YouTube straight away, which saves me an enormous amount of time. And it goes up on Google Plus as well automatically, and we tend to get a few comments via there, which is nice too. So that's all like an added benefit of having this just done using Hangouts as opposed to using another technology.
It all saves time. And you were talking about the happy birthday song. So I went to 3 meetups. I've been to 3 meetups. I think in probably the last maybe week or 2 weeks. I went to the WordPress San Francisco meetup, and that's where my buddy Brent Shepard, the guy that I actually share an office with at WeWork, he was up there presenting about WooCommerce subscriptions.
We should give Brent a shout out. What's the name of his plugin, and where can people find it?
So he's the developer of WooCommerce subscriptions. So if you go onto the WooCommerce site and you look for subscriptions, it's a great plugin for people who are looking to build subscription-based products. And I see him like cutting code, and he's just like, it's like the Matrix when I look over at his screen. He's got the big, setups on the side and things like that. And I think we'll have to actually get him on this podcast at some stage. He's got all the gear, so
we tried, didn't we? We tried to get him in at last minute and record like a conversation we're having with him. He wouldn't have a bar of it.
That's fair enough. He wasn't prepared.
It worked for Neil Patel, but didn't work on Brent.
Yeah, Brent's a good operator. But that WordPress meetup, it was actually Brent's 30th birthday on the day that he was presenting, and he'd been sick as a dog with the flu. And I let Zach, the organizer, know that it was his birthday. So we had probably about 100 odd WordPress people singing him happy birthday before the presentation started. So that was a bit of fun. And I was just standing up the back, like cracking up laughing, which is good fun. I think that was good. It was good to get the audience like riled up, because sometimes, WordPress presentations can be a little bit dry, but his was really good, really to the point. Talked about how it worked, and then they had a question time after that. I had to leave because I had another event to go to, which was Startup Live, and that was
You're too popular for your own good.
I'm loving these events. I'm having a lot of fun, meeting a lot of cool people.
You need an agent or something.
Right. It's funny though, I'm starting to see a couple of the same people at the same event, like at different startup events, and it's sort of like that scene in Fight Club, where Tyler, what's Edward Norton's character's name? He's going to all of these, meetings, and he's seeing the same sort of people. But it reminded me of that a little bit. But I went to this Startup Live event, and they had a few Bootstrap co-founders, and they also had Andrew Warner from Mixergy presenting, and it was a really, really well-run event. And the way that I'd typically judge the quality of an event is the temperature of the pizza, how cold the beer is, and then what the quality of the presentation is. And they were pretty much 10 out of 10 in all of those categories. So I might link to the 2 videos, because they had a pro video crew capture that, and that was about 2 hours long, which is kind of cool. And the other meetup that I went to just last night was the growthhackers.com meetup, and that was the first meetup with Sean Ellis from Qualaroo.com, and I hadn't actually done much research on Sean, but when he did his introduction of his background and started talking about his approach to growth hacking, it's been a bit, growth hacking, the term has been a bit beat up, and it sounds like a little bit of a, I don't know. I don't know. It sounds like a bit of a red herring. People say growth hacking, like sort of roll your eyes. But this guy, if you listen to the way that he markets and the way that he thinks about things, it's really insightful stuff. So hopefully I can post up I think I got about an hour of audio for that. And he talked about people's, specific businesses trying to get some traction on their apps and sites and, consultancies and things like that. So I'll be the correspondent on the ground for the San Francisco meetups and try and share as much as I can for people who aren't in the startup hub that is San Francisco.
Very good. And if anyone's listening and they're in the area, then let us know. Just send an email through to support@startupchat.co and Claff will go and buy you coffee. Or you can buy him coffee. I think he's a bit of a tight ass.
I've been doing that a lot lately. I've just been saying yes to everyone, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. So, and it gets me out of work too. Dan will be pinging me. He's like, "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm just having coffee. I'll be right back."
So, did you ask Andrew Warner how much revenue we have to be making to get on his podcast? Because I know he loves a good revenue number.
He was to the point with everyone on the panel about revenue. I'm interested to know. I think I'll have to go through some back channels to try and get his attention and see if we can jump on there. He was talking to Neville about Neville Medora, the guy from what has he got? The copywriting course on AppSumo, and his blog is nevblog.com.
Is he works at AppSumo, doesn't he, as the copywriting guy? Or
he's a good friend of Noah's. I'm not sure if they're I don't know if he consults into him or he's part of the team, but he's done a lot of work with Noah. But he was saying that when he went on Andrew Warner's podcast, that after that podcast, they didn't directly talk about the product that they didn't give a really strong product pitch or anything during this podcast, but so they did $40,000 in product sales off the back of the podcast, which I thought was just phenomenal. It gives you an idea of what the reach of Mixergy is and how many people are, consuming stuff that they hear about on those sort of podcasts. So
yeah,
that was kind of an eye-opener. That was really cool.
I wonder how it compares in numbers-wise to Entrepreneur on Fire.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. I don't know if Andrew Warner releases those sort of stats. I know John's completely transparent.
He wants everyone else
to.
Stuff. He wants everyone else to, but he doesn't release his own. But he likes it when people ask him, I think. We could just get him on our podcast, maybe.
Yeah. That could be a challenge for me, going after these guys, and it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, just constantly ask him about his revenue.
What's your revenue number?
Just every question. Yeah.
Yeah, but all of those events have been a lot of fun. So I'm loving the offline stuff. Dan's loving the online stuff, and I'm loving the offline stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been good. It's been a good month, and so next month we're going to have the same targets. We'll try and do a bit more content. I don't know what a realistic time frame is to launch the book, but I think I'll finish the first draft of it this week, possibly today. And I don't know what happens from there. I think we probably need a good couple of months of planning, and I don't know. But yeah.
It sounds like another launch in a week.
Could be. Yeah, could be. I think if I had have set myself a goal to do that, I could have quite easily done that. But yeah, I'd rather it actually be good. So
clear the calendar.
Maybe next week if we talk to Charlie Hone, or even if we don't talk to him, maybe we can do an episode on book marketing and some of the concepts that you mentioned that he was linking to, and some of the Ryan Holiday stuff. And
there's a wealth of information out there. It's really good because it's open source. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's got their own methods and ways of doing it. There's been a couple of good books that have come out. I think it's Tim Grahl. He wrote a book called How to Sell Your First 1,000 Copies or something like that. And that's a good one as well. So there's plenty of resources out there.
Well, I think Ryan Holiday and Tucker Max are working. Hopefully I've got those people right, because he mentioned it on the Altitude podcast, the Altoucher podcast. I think they're working on a book about book marketing, which kind of sounds like, and I think specifically about self-publishing maybe, but that sounds like he seems to be the go-to dude for that sort of stuff. So that would be cool if that came out sometime in the next couple of months and we could get some ideas from that.
That's so meta when you self-publish a book about self-publishing. Like that's amazing.
It's solid. All right, let's wind it up. It's been good. It's been real.
It has
Thanks
been
to the
real.
people who came on the call, and thanks to Spencer, who is our first and only commenter. Um, next week we'll either talk to Charlie Hone or we'll do a show. Actually, I think on the Wednesday, I think we've got someone booked in as a guest, but so maybe there'll be two next week. But yeah, this
Yeah.
episode, if you go to startupchat.co/53, and I'll write up all of the notes of the stuff Alex mentioned and I mentioned. And if you like the show, please go to iTunes and put in a review. And if you want to come on the show, just send us an email, support@startupchat.co. And if you're someone who's like you've got a skill in a particular area and you just want to talk about that topic, then that's cool. Just let us know what it is. Or if you're someone who wants just some free advice from a couple of bozos on your business, then tell us what you're looking for and you can come on and we can chat about it.
What do they say? You get what you pay for.
Exactly. We can guarantee that you will get as much value as you pay for on the Startup Chat podcast. That can be our money back guarantee. 30 days.
That's our tagline. Reversal risk.
You get what you pay for on the Startup Chat podcast. Download free here. All right, we better stop.
All right.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dan.